So laying up the locomotive is important, and how to do it properly. Well, do that at the beginning, dry everything out. If you have an oil burner, have your tender tank as full as you're going to need it for the operations during the snow season, things like that. The rest of it is just shutting down pretty much like usual. Draining the boiler, usually open up the blowdown. I don't uncork the dome. Some people do, some people don't. It depends on what your plans are. Um, I don't use any deskins. I will pull the bottom washout plugs on the boiler, whether one on the bottom of the shell, if it's there, or cylinder. The four around the firebox, great. Sometimes one just above the fire door, just to make sure everything dries out well enough. There we go. There should be enough heat in all the wrappers to dry everything out. As soon as it's dried out, say a day or so later, and the boiler is cool, cool to the touch, there's ambient temperature, put all the plugs back in. That way nothing gets inside of it. Whoop-de-doo. Still leave all the valves open, including the blowdown valve. If you're worrying about wildlife getting inside of it, squirrels putting nuts in the boiler, we've had that before. Mice deciding that it's a wonderful place to make a nest. Various other living beings taking up residence. Then stuff the end full of steel wool. Blowdowns often are just the pipe. Sometimes a lot of locomotives still have their deflectors. You can put, a piece of cloth, old T-shirt wrapped and zip tied over it or ratchet strapped over it. Something that'll block entry by physical other beings to keep everything going. But that'll also allow the boiler to keep at ambient temperature and to dry out so you don't have condensation. It'll generally be about atmospheric temperature, not atmospheric humidity. And of course, as the temperature outside drops, there will be less water in the atmosphere to be retained on the boiler, inside or outside. A little is okay-ish. It's a wear device. It's going to go out eventually, no matter how well you take care of it. That's my perception. Other people have different opinions. Some will use deskins, things like that. Generally, I don't and generally wouldn't. Yes, a boiler is an expensive repair. You're talking around $1 million or $2 million for a road locomotive. Equally, it'll last you 100 years. So you can defray that cost over a period of time if you're smart about it. Anyway, back to laying up. Everything else, dumping ashes, raking out grates. There's various things that individual locomotives you have to do. Like one, we had to literally take apart the oil flow system, and we called it rotor-rootering. We'd take a specific brass or copper rod or a piece of copper pipe and take all the gack out of the inside of the oil pipes, because on this locomotive it had a propensity of plugging its own oil pipes. Yay! Things like that. So there are various things to shut down for the year, regardless of whether you're going to operate over winter or not. And a lot of those things are individual to an individual locomotive or piece of equipment. Anyway, back on to winter operations. Now, everything is cold outside. There's snow on the ground. You might have snow falling. Locomotive may be in a shed or maybe outside. Either which way, it's about, everything's cold to the touch. Don't lick your hand and stick it on it. Stuff like that. So how do you get it back up and running? Well, you undo a lot of the stuff you did. If you have the washout plugs out, put the plugs back in. If you any gauze or anything in the blowdown pipe, take that out. Close all your valves back up lightly, not honk on them. Tender tank, the water tank on the tender should be empty and dried out. If you're using oil as a fuel, that should be as full as you want it to be. Make sure everything's reassembled before you open up any valves, water or fuel, things like that. Button it up, make it ready to operate again. What we would do at one place where this oil burner was, we'd drag it out of the shop, an unheated shop, well, semi-heated shop, but generally left unheated, and drag it out and start preparing it. Now, one of the things would be is, why would you fill your boiler full of absolutely cold water, whether it be a solid fuel locomotive or an oil-fired one? Especially if you want it to operate within the next few days. Well, you don't. but water comes out of the ground at 52 degrees. If you have other sources of water, like a standing water tank or anything, it probably want to drain that water tank before so it doesn't freeze and crack. So how do you fill it back up? Well, where various places do various things. Sometimes you have it in a heated shop. Okay, great. So then you can fill it up, 2 weeks ahead of time, and it'll normalize to the temperature of the shop, whether it be 50 degrees, 60 degrees, whatever. That's great. That's all wonderful, but not everybody has a shop, or a heated shop at least, or a constantly heated shop at least, things like that. So at one of the places, they acquired we called it the bomb because it looked like something out of a Mad Scientist magazine. It was a oil-fired supplementary water heater that would previously occupied space in a steam-worked and steam-heated facility. So you had high-pressure steam, and you had, it operating as a heat transfer water heater for the most part, unless the supplementary water heater, which is this device, was brought into action if the steam system was to be down for any length of time. So this is pipes all over the place, a lot of them capped off. It was just a plumber's nightmare monstrosity. But for what we were doing, perfectly great. Plunked it outside on on its own cribbing, which, wasn't so great, but whoop-de-doo. And all it needed was electricity for the gun burner and fuel oil for that burner. So we had a couple of 55-gallon drums that we set up as movable oil feed for it. You could take them in and out, tip them back upright, fill up the drum, tip it back over into a cradle, and put the piping back onto it to oil feed to the burner, and switch out which drum was being drawn from. So you could have it in operation continuously. And I mean, when I say this is a large object, it was about 8-10 feet tall and maybe 5 foot in diameter. This was not small. This was not a small heater. And it was enough to cook, a couple 100 gallons of water at a time. Bring it up from whatever temperature, around, say 50 degrees out of the ground, and take it up to around 200 degrees, which was very well suited for what we wanted to do. We wanted to preheat the water and dump it into the boiler. Or if we actually, that one we shouldn't have, but a few of the times we actually did cook it up to, about 210 degrees, 215. So that was actually starting to steam, but wasn't supposed to. things that OSHA doesn't know about. But so yeah, we would fill. I mean, you're talking a couple thousand gallons in a mainline locomotive boiler. So it'd take a little bit, but it wasn't challenging. There was a big thermometer on the side of the water heater, so you know what the internal temperature was, which worked perfectly good for our purposes. Pump it in, out it go as soon as the temperature dropped below 100 on the after flowing to the locomotive. Shut the valves off, let it cook for a while. No big deal. Or at least not that big of a deal. Watch what level of water was in the locomotive. Watch for leaks as you're doing that, etc., etc. Just like normal startup operations, just when snow is falling or it's 20 degrees, 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside, things like that. So that's how we would get the boiler ready to operate. And again, I'm going to stop this here and go on to the next segment. Should be just a moment.